Every civilization has created heroes. Ancient Mesopotamia had Gilgamesh. The Greeks had Hercules and Odysseus. Britain had King Arthur. China had Mulan. Today, we have Superman, Spider-Man, Harry Potter, and countless others. The names have changed. The worlds they inhabit have changed. Yet the heroes themselves remain surprisingly familiar. Why? Why do people separated by thousands of years, speaking different languages, believing in different gods, continue to tell the same kind of story? This isn't a coincidence. Human beings have always used stories to preserve what they valued most. Long before schools, books, or the internet, stories carried knowledge from one generation to the next. They taught children how to act, what to fear, what to admire, and what kind of person they should strive to become. Heroes were at the center of those stories. Not because they were perfect, but because they embodied ideals, courage, wisdom, justice, sacrifice. These qualities could not be explained as easily as they could be demonstrated, so every civilization imagined someone who lived them. Perhaps that is why heroes have never disappeared. Technology has transformed the world. Empires have risen and fallen. Religions have spread and faded. Yet we still fill our books, films, and games with heroes. Not because we have outgrown ancient myths, but because we have never outgrown the questions they were trying to answer. To understand why heroes exist in every culture, we first have to understand something deeper. The stories we tell are never just about the characters within them. They are about us. When we think of heroes, it's easy to focus on what makes them extraordinary. Their strength, their intelligence, their courage. But if that were enough, we would admire every powerful person. We don't. History is filled with conquerors, kings, and warriors whose names are remembered, but not revered. Power alone has never been enough to create a hero. A hero is someone who chooses to use their strength in service of something greater than themselves. That is the distinction every civilization seems to recognize. Hercules uses his strength to complete impossible labors. King Arthur fights to unite a kingdom rather than rule through fear. Mulan risks everything to protect her family. Spider-Man could use his abilities for fame or wealth, yet chooses responsibility instead. The details change. The pattern does not. Psychologists have long suggested that stories help us model human behavior. Long before we face life's greatest challenges ourselves, we experience them through the lives of others. Every difficult choice a hero makes becomes a question directed at us. Would you do the same? Would you tell the truth if it cost you everything? Would you stand alone if everyone else walked away? Would you sacrifice your own comfort for someone you loved? Heroes allow us to explore these questions without living through them ourselves. Perhaps this is why the greatest heroes are never flawless. If they were born fearless, their courage would mean very little. If they never doubted themselves, their victories would teach us nothing. Instead, they hesitate, they fail, they make mistakes, and then they choose to continue. That choice is what transforms an ordinary character into a hero. Not perfection, not power, choice. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more than fear. Perhaps that is why heroic stories continue to endure. They remind us that greatness is rarely something people are born with. More often, it is something they choose, one difficult decision at a time. One thing unites almost every hero ever created. They suffer. It doesn't matter whether the story was written 3,000 years ago or 3 months ago. Gilgamesh loses his closest friend. Odysseus spends years trying to return home. Mulan risks everything to protect her family. Harry Potter grows up without parents. Batman witnesses the murder of his own. Even modern superheroes rarely begin their journey with power alone. More often, they begin with loss. Why? If heroes are meant to inspire us, why don't we imagine lives free from pain? Perhaps because, deep down, we know that isn't how life works. Every person experiences suffering, loss, failure, fear. The question has never been whether we will face hardship. The question is, what hardship will make of us? Heroes offer one possible answer. They show us that suffering does not have to be meaningless. It can become the very thing that shapes our character. This idea appears again and again across cultures. The hero enters the story as one person and leaves as another. Not because the world changes, because they do. Without the trials, there is no transformation. Without sacrifice, there is no wisdom. Without failure, there is no growth. Perhaps this is why stories rarely end when the hero receives their power. That is usually where the story begins. Because strength is easy to admire. Character is something else entirely. A hero is not defined by the gifts they possess, but by the choices they make after life becomes difficult. This is why we continue telling these stories, not because we expect to fight dragons or save kingdoms, but because we all hope that our own struggles might have meaning, that our failures might teach us something, that the pain we carry today might become the source of tomorrow's strength. Perhaps heroes were never created to show us extraordinary people. Perhaps they were created to remind ordinary people what they are capable of becoming. But heroes do more than show us who we could become. They also warn us about who we could become instead. Every virtue carries a danger. Courage can become recklessness. Confidence can become arrogance. Loyalty can become obsession. Strength can become cruelty. The line between a hero and a villain is often thinner than we imagine. Consider Achilles, the greatest warrior in the Greek army. His courage is unquestionable, his skill unmatched, yet his pride cost the lives of countless others. Or take Anakin Skywalker. His greatest strength is his willingness to do anything for the people he loves. It is also the very quality that leads to his downfall. The same pattern appears again and again. The hero's greatest gift often becomes their greatest weakness. Perhaps this is why the most memorable heroes are never perfect. They remind us that character is not something we achieve once and keep forever. It is something we choose again and again. Every difficult decision becomes a crossroads. One path leads toward wisdom, the other toward destruction. The difference is rarely talent, it is judgment. Psychologically, these stories force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The capacity for good and evil does not exist in different kinds of people. It exists in all of us. Given enough fear, power, anger, or desperation, anyone can lose their way. Perhaps that is why we continue telling heroic stories, not simply to celebrate virtue, but to remind ourselves how easily virtue can be lost. The greatest heroes are not those who never face darkness. They are those who recognize it and choose not to let it define them. Heroes have existed for as long as human beings have told stories. Not because every civilization faced the same enemies, but because every civilization faced the same questions. How should we live? What is worth sacrificing for? What does it mean to be courageous? No single philosophy has answered these questions once and for all. So we continue asking them, and we continue telling stories. Perhaps that is why every generation creates new heroes, not to replace the old ones, but to rediscover the same truths in a language that speaks to its own time. The armor changes, the setting changes, the names change. Human nature does not. We still admire courage over cowardice, compassion over cruelty, wisdom over pride, responsibility over selfishness. The hero simply gives those values a human face. Perhaps the greatest lesson heroes offer is not that extraordinary people exist. It is that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary choices. Because every hero begins with a decision to stand when it would be easier to run, to help when it would be easier to look away, to sacrifice when it would be easier to think only of themselves. Maybe that is why we never stop creating heroes. Not because we believe someone else will save the world, but because they remind us that when our own moment arrives, we also have a choice. And perhaps that has been the true purpose of heroes all along. If today's exploration resonated with you, we highly recommend the book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. For decades, it has explored why every civilization creates heroes, why these stories continue to endure, and what they reveal about human nature. You'll find a link to the book in the description and in the pinned comment. You can also explore more philosophy and psychology books through our bookshop page. If you'd like to explore more ideas like these, consider subscribing for more explorations of philosophy, psychology, and the timeless stories that continue to shape the human experience. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Thank you for watching.